Hi, I'm Cindy Hall, President of the Women's Congressional Policy Institute, WCPI. Welcome to our 2023 Fellowship webinar. As you know, WCPI is a nonpartisan, nonprofit public policy organization whose mission is to bring together a community of bipartisan women policymakers and trusted partners to advance issues of importance to women, develop the next generation of women leaders, and foster a more effective and representative democracy.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Williams, Vice President of WCPI. Thanks for joining us for this afternoon's webinar. First, a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website. Secondly, we will leave time toward the end of the presentation for questions. In the meantime, please feel free to post your questions using the Q&A function. The chat function has been disabled, so you must submit your questions using the Q&A. Our communications associate, Kritika Sharma, who you'll meet a bit later on, will be moderating the questions. Finally, if you need technical support to complete your application in the Embark portal, please contact support@embark.com. And if you have other questions about the program, please email us at fellowships@wcpinst.org.
Since 1980, the Congressional Fellowships on Women in Public Policy program has placed a select number of current or recent graduate students with a proven commitment to equity for women in the DC offices of members of Congress and congressional committees. Fellows gain practical policymaking experience as they work as legislative assistants in congressional offices from January through the end of July. More than 300 talented women have come to Capitol Hill since the program started at the Women's Research and Education Institute, WREI.
As we begin to recognize the accomplishments of our current cohort, the 2022 class of fellows, we also are excited about this application cycle for 2023, which will be for our 10th class of WCPI fellows. And now that we're about halfway through the application cycle, with the deadline being Monday, June 6th at 5 p.m. Eastern, we thought this would be a good time to host this webinar.
Our goal for you today is to provide more information about the program and its history, introduce you to two former WCPI fellows, and answer your questions about the application process. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge this year's fellowship sponsors. Longtime sponsor PepsiCo, GSK Consumer Healthcare, the Khan Education Foundation, Center Road Solutions, and a number of former fellows and individual donors. And I want to do a shout out to Dr. Irene Trowell-Harris, longtime director of the VA Center for Women Veterans, and the first African-American woman to achieve the rank of Major General in the National Guard, who has been a longtime supporter of the fellowship program. Please visit the fellowship page on our website at wcpinst.org to see the full list of our sponsors and individual donors.
To give you an overview of the program, fellows work 40 hours per week from January through July as legislative assistants. We host a mandatory 2-week orientation, which will begin in January 2023. Throughout the program, fellows also meet once a week at issue seminars with women's advocates, congressional staff, researchers, and lobbyists. In 2023, we expect to award at least 3 fellowships. Fellows will receive a stipend of about $3,400 per month. An additional sum of up to $1,000 may be paid for health insurance expenses.
You can find more information about the eligibility requirements within the application materials and on our website. However, if you have specific questions about eligibility, please feel free to post them using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. During the interview process, Cheryl and I are often asked about the qualities or characteristics that make a successful congressional fellow. We select fellows on the basis of academic competence and demonstrated interest in the public policy process. Strong oral and written communication skills are a must. Students from all disciplines and academic backgrounds are welcome to apply. We are looking for fellows who genuinely are interested in public policy issues and important to women and girls, and who want to learn the legislative process. As part of our mission to foster a more representative democracy, we also strongly encourage applicants who otherwise may not have the opportunity to work on Capitol Hill, whether due to socioeconomic circumstances, lack of political connections, or other factors, to apply to the program.
Candidates also frequently ask about the process for choosing their placements. Once the fellows class is chosen, we work closely with them throughout the fall to advise the fellows on preparing for the Hill, narrowing down their potential office choices, navigating the interview process, and choosing their placements. We now would like to bring two of our former fellows into this conversation. These women will talk about their experiences working as fellows on the Hill and offer some advice on what makes for a successful application. I'll now turn the program over to Kritika.
Hi, I'm Kritika Sharma, Communications Associate at WCPI. Today, we have former fellows Marshall Bryant and Adriana Lagorio joining us. So let's start by having each of you tell us your fellowship class and your congressional placement.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marshall Bryant. I was class of 2021, and I was placed in Congresswoman Barbara Lee's office.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adriana. I was a class of 2020, and I was placed in Congresswoman Jamie Herrera Butler's office.
Thank you. So I'd like to start the conversation by asking you, why did you apply for the fellowship program?
I applied for the fellowship program after I graduated from my undergrad degree. I wasn't completely sure which direction I wanted to go in government, but I had really enjoyed internships on the Hill. And so I found the WCPI fellowship, and I liked that it placed you in congressional offices at a level that was higher than an intern, and that I could work on actual legislation. And I felt that it would give me the exposure I needed to figure out if I liked the policy process versus going to an agency and being on the implementation side of things.
So I applied after I graduated with my master's, and I decided to apply because I had had experience as an organizer, and I had also had experience on a political campaign. And so I really wanted to get some policy experience. And as Adri said, being placed in a congressional office, being placed as the equivalent of a legislative assistant really appealed to me. And also what appealed to me was the fact that you got to choose your placement and not just be placed anywhere. So it was an exciting opportunity, and I definitely saw the value in it. And having gone through it, I see the value even more.
So can you both talk about your experience working on the Hill? And we can start with Marshall this time.
Yeah, so it was a tough time for the country. My class actually got placed, our placements were a little bit delayed because of the insurrection. And also we were completely remote. At least two of us were completely remote for the majority of the fellowship due to COVID. So, it's a little bit different than other classes prior to ours and after ours. But it was still such a substantive experience. And I really credit that to my legislative director. I didn't know what to expect when I took the fellowship and, the things that I would be working on, but I was actually working on things that were priorities for the Congresswoman. And even though it was mostly remote, all but 3 weeks, I think it was, I still had the opportunity to do so many things and to really focus on the things that were important to me. I got my master's in international relations and global studies. So I did, my legislative director asked me what I was interested in working on. And so I got to, attend so many policy briefings. I got to work on some priorities of the Congresswoman, and it was just much more substantive than I could have imagined, and especially during COVID, and what was really a tough time in Congress. I really had a well-rounded experience.
Yeah, and I would say that I was the class that, when 2020 kind of happened. So I was on the Hill for 3 months virtual, 3 months in person, and then the rest of my fellowship was finished virtually. And it was obviously a unique experience, but I feel that every fellow is going to deal with something or some, emergency or crisis or issue that comes up. And I really got the opportunity to not only figure out how to navigate the Hill in a virtual environment, but then also to work on things like, like the CARES Act, various like things like that, and understanding kind of how much we funded the government at, or how much we were putting into resources, and then being able to convey that back to constituents. So that was kind of a really interesting, I think, component of my fellowship, because there was such a high need for help across the country, especially in our district. I not only was working on legislative things like, how many millions or trillions are we giving to this, program? I was also working on, talking to constituents, trying to help them get access to resources. And I think that was one of the things I liked about my fellowship, is like, you can have interest areas in my office, like Marshall's tried to, ensure that I was able to get exposure to policy in my interest areas. I actually came to the Hill with a national security background. And I think it was great because it also teaches you to be super flexible. Like the fellowship, you can really tailor it to however you'd like. But one of the fun parts, I think, is, I was literally doing national security policy in Latin America. And then I came to Jamie's office and I was working on salmon policy, like salmon, like fish. So there's like a lot of things that you can do with the Hill and this fellowship. And so, I think a lot of my experience really was around kind of navigating the, where policy meets the constituents, and kind of how to navigate a very big crisis that our country was facing.
Thank you. My next question is, what lessons did you learn from your time as a WCPI fellow?
This is a good one. So I would say I kind of already hinted at it. One of my lessons that I learned is always be flexible. Hill, especially on the House side, Hill offices are very understaffed, and people have to do a lot of things, even if they're a specialist or whatnot in a certain area. So it really taught me about being flexible, and then also always being kind of curious or interested. If you have an inquisitive mind, if you love to learn new things, it's a great experience. And then I think also I feel this is kind of hinted, but the constituent always wins. So you could be like, I don't want to deal with constituents, I just want to do foreign affairs policy and like fly to Ukraine. Well, that's great, but you're a fellow. So if a constituent calls you and needs help, that's also something that's really important. So there's always a service component, I think, that the fellowship taught me. And you will work on policy, you're going to do awesome things, but if you do not kind of feel like you're called to service, or you just kind of don't really like the idea of working with constituents, or maybe having to meet with a constituent, then I would really think about that, because the House, especially the House of Representatives, is very constituent focused. So that was a good lesson I learned.
I would definitely echo flexibility. You have to be ready to do anything, whether you're a fellow or you're, a full-time staffer. And you also have to really lean into being helpful to other people, whether it's, talking to constituents, or if there's, some big deadline that you're up against. You really have to work with your colleagues in order to make sure that, your member, that their message is getting across, that the work that needs to be done is getting done. And I think that I also learned just how demanding it is to be a staffer. Of course, I was a fellow and, I was working 40 hours a week, but I saw the dedication that the, full-time staff had, to the Congresswoman, to constituents, and to, the body itself. And so, you really have to be dedicated, and you really have to, put your ego aside, and be willing to really, dig in and do the work. It is a lot of work, but it's rewarding work. And, something that I specifically learned from, Cindy and Cheryl was just how much of a privilege it is to be working in Congress, whether you're a fellow and you decide to stay on the Hill, or, you are only a fellow for a short time and then you decide to move off. It's such a unique experience, and it's a once in a lifetime experience. And that has been the thing that has stayed with me with this fellowship, is that it was such an amazing opportunity, and it truly was a once in a lifetime experience.
Thank you so much. In a word or two, what does this fellowship mean to you, either personally or professionally?
I would say substantive or substantial. The amount of experience that I got in it, and the relationships that I built have definitely propelled my career, but they also helped me grow as a person. And that sounds a little cliche, but I was a different person from the beginning of the fellowship to the end of the fellowship. And I would definitely owe my career, my position now, to this fellowship. I feel like I had a lot of support from my legislative director and my office in general, and that's certainly the experiences that I got, and the relationships that I built definitely helped me get my job now. So definitely substantive is the way that I would describe it.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's kind of hard to do this in 2 words, but I would say that it was challenging in the sense of, you're going to be challenged. You're going to go in thinking, one thing, and then, thank God for Cindy and Cheryl who run the fellowship, but there's going to be something that totally throws you off. So it's challenging in the sense of you're getting put into an office at a very high level that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to be put in. So you're going to be expected to perform at a high level, and give yourself some grace. You're gonna mess up. And then I think the other one I would say is empowering, because I didn't know what the heck I was doing when I started this fellowship, and then by the time I ended, I felt that I had a lot more confidence. Cindy and Cheryl really the fellowship program really focuses on also educating you, so you don't just walk in not knowing anything. They take time to try to get you up to speed, and it's empowering. There's a lot more women staffers on the Hill now. There's a lot more members of Congress, but if you're someone, that you just don't know where to start, or you need support, and you don't have the financial resources to just be an intern, and make, I don't know, maybe I think it's under $1,000 a month, something like that, then this is a really empowering experience. And you literally for I think now it's 7 months, but for 7 to 9 months, you have a entire support network that's trying to help you, navigate this environment. So, yeah.
That's really wonderful. Thank you. What advice do you have for candidates as they complete their applications? What would you say makes a successful application?
So, I would say one thing that I really liked about the application process, is that really be sincere, and I think if it's when I applied, they ask you supplemental questions, and really don't just put an answer that you think they want to hear. Be sincere. I shared about my experience with my mom, and I was sharing things with an organization I didn't even know the people at, but I was hey, this is why I want to work on the Hill or want to work in government, is because I saw my mom struggling and all these things, blah blah blah. Maybe you don't have that type of story, but there might be something unique, and a reason why you want to work on the Hill. And I also think I shared that I was bartending at that time. It was like, what makes you a good candidate to work on the Hill? I was like, I bartend and I deal with multiple personalities all day. And I think this would help me navigate all the crazy personalities on the Hill. I wasn't like, oh, I'm a fellow and I'm studying in the jungle right now, writing my PhD. No, honest. I was like, I'm a bartender. So I think that there's something to be said about being sincere and professional, but if something makes you unique, share that with the fellowship, because I think they're really looking for people who are sincere. And obviously, just a general thing is if you're a good writer, that's also helpful. But I applied. I guess I haven't applied for a while. So
I'm going to echo some of what Adri said. I definitely would encourage you to put yourself in the application. So, focus on what makes you a strong candidate, focus on what makes you unique. I made sure in my application that I talked about what got me into politics. I talked about, my journey in politics, and that doesn't mean that you have to have all the internships and, past fellowships. It just means that you, really show your passion and you're, putting your best foot forward. I would also say that you definitely want to give yourself time. I am going to be honest. I turned my application in the day that it was due. I would not encourage that. But what I would encourage is that you really take time to look at these questions and be thoughtful. And again, make sure that your personality shines through, because that's really important. The Hill is all about personalities. And as Adri said, if you have some experience, and again, it doesn't have to be, Capitol Hill experience, it doesn't have to be DC experience, but if you have some experience that you feel like will translate well into this fellowship, dealing with different types of people, working really well under pressure, then make sure that you highlight that, because that's going to make you stand out, and that's going to, show WCPI why you should be placed in an office and be working at this, high level of government.
So before we move on to the audience Q&A, do you have any parting words of advice that you'd like to share?
I would just say that this is such an amazing opportunity. And so, if you've listened to us today and you're, questioning whether or not you should apply, I am telling you, you should apply. I did not think that I was going to get chosen for this amazing opportunity, but I did. And if I had, talked myself out of it, then I wouldn't be sitting here today speaking to you all. So, believe in yourself. And I truly mean that. Believe in yourself. And, see what this, fellowship, besides what you can bring to the fellowship, think about what the fellowship, can do for you in your goals. And, I will also say best of luck. It's an amazing opportunity, and it's one that you should definitely go for.
Yeah, I would echo everything Marshall said, and just say that, this is also, I think, it's a life-changing opportunity. I was the same. I did not think I would get selected. I didn't feel like I fit the candidate profile of previous fellows. And what I learned is that Cindy and Cheryl, who run WCPI, are looking for a diverse set of candidates. It doesn't matter if, your whole life you focused on women's issues and healthcare, or you focused on national security or international affairs. So, again, don't talk yourself out of it. You never know. And I would say also just, something to think about is WCPI is very bipartisan, nonpartisan, bipartisan. I'm a Republican, Marcel's a Democrat. So I think if you are someone who wants to see partisanship end and to work with a great group of women and see them succeed, whether they're a Democrat, independent, or Republican, this is the fellowship for you. Because I can say some of my best friends on the Hill are not only people who are in the fellowship, but are also of opposite parties. So I just think that's something to think about. But yes, apply, don't doubt yourself, and it can open up a whole new opportunity for you in your career.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Adriana and Marshall, and talking about your experiences as a WCPI fellow. I'm going to turn it over to Cindy again.
Yes, thank you so much, Adriana and Marshall. It was really enjoyable to listen to you both, and thank you for taking this time. We are now going to open up the discussion to audience questions. Just a reminder that the chat function has been disabled, so you do need to submit questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And we will answer as many questions as we can in the remaining time.
So we have a couple questions that are probably best for Marshall and Adri. So one question is, what extent of experience did you have with policy or politics prior to your fellowship?
So my extent was I had been in politics in the sense of like I had worked on campaigns, and then after I graduated from undergrad, I had spent a year working in county policy on the local level. So I would say maybe like a year and a half, 2 years. I didn't really count the campaign experience, but I had been on campaigns. So I guess policy or being kind of in local government, my experience was about a year and a half.
For me, I don't know if you consider organizing, especially student organizing, being in politics, but, that's dealing with very real issues, on a hyper local level and, sometimes the state level. And then I did work on a campaign that was for a few months. So, again, my experience is really my interest in politics and not necessarily, hard experience. I also had an internship at the White House in undergrad, but that had been long before I applied to the fellowship.
Thank you. Another question is, after your fellowship, did either of you continue on the Hill? Someone noticed that Adri's in the office today, so.
Yes. So I, Cindy and Cheryl know this probably better than anyone, but I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. And I, interviewed multiple places and in multiple offices. And I did end up on the Hill. I now work for Congressman Mike Quigley of Chicago. And, one thing that I want to say is that, the fellowship really helped me prepare for my job now. They're both senior members of the Appropriations Committee. My, previous boss, Congresswoman Lee, and then also my current boss, Congressman Quigley. So, I really felt like this fellowship prepared me to, kind of work as a full-time staffer, because that's what you're doing. So yeah, I have stayed on the Hill. I started in Congressman Quigley's office in September of last year.
I stayed on the Hill. I stayed on actually with Jamie Herrera Butler's office, who I did my fellowship with. So an opportunity presented itself, and I was hired on as a legislative assistant after my fellowship.
Thank you. Potentially a question for Cindy. Could you talk more about post-fellowship employment outcomes? To what extent do other fellows end up on the Hill?
Yeah, I think the fellows that want to stay on the Hill for the most part have been successful in doing so. Not 100%. There are some years that are more difficult than others, depending on the party that you may be working in. But for the most part, if fellows wanted to stay on the Hill, they have succeeded in doing that.
Another question is, could fellows be placed on a committee?
Yes. We encourage placements in individual member offices. We think it's a fuller experience and tends to be give you a better understanding of the public policy process, because you tend to work on more issues. Committees are a little more focused, much more focused. And so if your issues are not active during the time frame of the fellowship, you might just be doing research and you're not really learning too much about the policy process. But we have had fellows placed on committee staff.
I have a few logistical questions. I'm going to direct them to Cheryl, and we'll do them one after the other. Are non-US citizens eligible for this fellowship?
As long as you are legally eligible to work in the United States, you are eligible for this program.
And are AB 540 graduate students applicable? I'm not sure if you know what that is.
I'm not sure what that is. So if the person who typed that question could provide a little bit more information, either via email or as another question, we might be able to answer that one.
We have some people starting PhD programs. Are they eligible for the program?
So we require that you have completed at least 9 hours of coursework before applying for the fellowship. So if you're just starting in August, you probably will not be eligible for the program. Yeah, so you need to have at least 9 course hours under your belt before you can apply.
Some people have commitments during the fellowship. Someone needs to go to something on the weekend. Are those potential conflicts with this fellowship? Can that be worked out?
I think I saw a couple of the questions, like someone being in the reserves. Typically, the fellows are not working on the weekend, although there are some times when Congress may be in session for under special circumstances where they might be required to work, but our fellows are held to a 40-hour work week. So, and we do pay very close attention to that. So if you had an obligation like being in the reserves where you needed to serve over the weekend, we don't foresee that being an issue.
Some questions about the first week orientation. What day does it start? Do they need to be physically located in DC for the orientation?
Yes. You need to be here in DC for the orientation. We are anticipating, and for the fellowship, we are anticipating that at this point that Capitol Hill is going to be reopening fully. And so we are anticipating that fellows will need to be here in DC and will be working on the Hill. So no, this would not be remote.
Is there a decided day when the fellowship starts in January yet?
I have not looked at the calendar. So Cindy, do you know the date?
Whatever weekday comes after New Year's Day.
Yeah, it's that first that I'll take a quick look at the calendar right now. So that would be January's 2nd would be that first day.
Awesome. We have more application questions. How important are references? What kind of letters of recommendation should people be providing?
Do you want to take that, Cindy?
Sure. References are really important, but one of the things that frustrates us is if all we get, and it can be hard if you've only been a student and you haven't done anything else, although I doubt that's true for most of you, getting only academic references is too much. We really would like to see references from anywhere you've done either volunteer work or paid work. We've had references from restaurants to Adriana's comment about being a bartender. We welcome those types of references. We really want to know what kind of person you are, not just, the impressive academic record you've built.
Someone's asking, what is considered a recent graduate?
So you need to have completed your degree within 2 years of January 2023. So that means that you would have had to have graduated no later than January 2021 to be eligible for the program.
So someone is asking, they're a former journalist, they're a little bit more advanced in their career, but they're an MPA candidate currently. Is this something that they're eligible for as a fellow?
Certainly. As long as they meet the other eligibility requirements, absolutely.
We have some questions about housing as well. Are there resources for finding affordable housing, and does the stipend include housing?
I can address that. The stipend does not include housing. In the sense that you're getting paid, and so your housing has to come out of it. But we do not have a separate housing allowance. We do provide some, we send out resources for housing to make recommendations of where you can find housing listings, things of that nature. We do also occasionally have former fellows who are able to offer housing opportunities. And then finally, we really encourage people to look at staying with family members. We've had fellows who lived with friends of family members. There are all sorts of situations that can work because it is an expensive place to live for sure.
So I think some people are a little bit confused about the placement process. Are they responsible for finding their placements? How much do you both help with that?
I mean, that's what we help a lot. We do not expect you to know where you're going. It's a process that takes throughout the fall. We're working with fellows, giving them assignments to look into potential placements. And we keep a list of offices that are interested in a fellow. And then we work with the fellows to narrow down their placements. And then as they're interviewing within 3 offices, we do not like more than 3 interviews. We help them, provide advice and so forth. And maybe the fellows would like to address that too.
Yeah, I'll just say that for me, I kind of built a wish list of the, offices that I would like to serve my fellowship in. And that initial list, and maybe even my second list, none of those offices worked out. And I'm actually really happy about that because I ended up, I think, getting placed in the best place that I absolutely could. Cindy and Cheryl are very, very helpful when it comes to figuring out, where to go. I can't remember if I suggested Congresswoman Lee or if they suggested, but they definitely, kind of facilitated me getting that interview, especially after, my first lists didn't work out. So I think that a lot of times, fellows can feel like it's a really stressful situation, but for me, it ended up really working out. And again, having Cindy and Cheryl to support and really point me in the right direction and say that these are the offices that are interested in having a fellow, or, maybe because Congresswoman Lee hadn't had a WCPI fellow before, but they were really, really helpful in facilitating and setting up that interview for me.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I agree. The list that I thought I was going to be, who I wanted to be with, some of those offices just weren't taking fellows. So that's kind of where you start with the be flexible, because, Cindy and Cheryl really helped me figure out various offices that might, want a fellow or be interested. And I'm really happy that they suggested my current boss, who I'm with still, because I would have never thought of her, and she was not on my initial list at all. So yeah, they're very helpful with the process and getting placed.
We have another question for the fellows, actually. Do you typically take courses towards your degrees, like in the evenings or afternoons?
I was graduated, so I was full-time, like working, but I would say from knowing people who work on the Hill and are still in school, all of them have courses in the evening. So I don't know if that's helpful, but I do have some friends who are in law school and stuff, and they're all evening course kind of people.
Yeah, same here. I had finished my degree, but I know that someone in my current office, he was working on his MBA. So yeah, he was, taking courses in the evening, and people do it every day on the Hill.
We have one question about placements. Are placements in the House and Senate? Okay.
Yes.
There's a lot of questions. Is the stipend taxable or not?
Yes.
And I don't know if someone wants to hop into the question section. There's a lot of specific questions about eligibility, like dates. I don't know if that's useful to everyone, but we can try to get to those separately. Someone is asking, what kind of policies related to child welfare did you complete, or did you work on while completing the fellowship? I don't know if that was directed at one of the fellows specifically.
I mean, so during the fellowship, I worked on all different types of policy. with child welfare, I couldn't specifically say that I worked on that with my boss, even though she, you know, does a lot of work on like children's health and different things like that. But I feel like child welfare is like a really big umbrella. So now in her office, I have worked on like WIC, you know, SNAP, nutrition, you know, different like DOJ programs for like child abuse and like obviously children's health. But it's very, I guess, like maybe, you know, if that's like your passion area, like I think depending on what office you get in, you can make sure that you convey that to them. But again, you might be asked, you know, to do something completely different, and you just kind of have to roll with the punches to be a good, I would say, to be a good fellow and to get the most out of your fellowship.
Yeah, I didn't have really that much experience with child welfare. I know that Congresswoman Lee is the chair of the Poverty Reduction Caucus. And so, you know, there was a little bit of work with that, but I would, you know, agree with Adriana that you will be asked to work on many different things. And, you know, just be flexible to that. Again, it's very important to communicate, you know, during your interview, I think, with the potential offices, but also after you get your placement. It's important to communicate what you're interested in working on, but, you know, you do have to be flexible. And, you know, some of the things that I had, you know, no intention of ever working on were the things that kind of helped me out the most and were most interesting to me.
The best part about the fellowship, if I can chime in here, is that you might think that you like an issue and be really passionate about it. That's how I felt about immigration. And then I started doing it. I'm like, I don't want to do this issue ever in my life. And that's why the fellowship is great, because you realize that on the outside, it looks great. And then you get to the inside, you're like, wow, I don't want to work on this. So just putting that bug in people's ear.
I know we're pretty much at the end of our time, so I think we're going to conclude our Q&A there. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email us.
Yes, and I would also note that a number of the questions that were not answered are eligibility questions. So please email and we'll try to do that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We are grateful to Adriana and Marshall for being here with us and offering their insights into the program. We also are grateful to our sponsors and congressional partners who help make the program possible.
Thanks also to the WCPI staff for their work on this program and this webinar, particularly Kritika Sharma. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar will be available on our website soon. If you have additional questions, please email fellowships@wcpinst.org. And again, if you need technical support, please, for completing your application, please email support@embark.com. Finally, you will receive a follow-up email from us that contains a link to a survey about this fellowship. Please take a few minutes to respond to that. We really welcome your feedback. And thanks again for joining us.
And good luck with your applications.